Hello everyone, so I'm Andy Richardson from the University of Hull. I'm a marine ecologist. Increasingly I work at that interface between marine ecology and human activities, of which obviously fisheries is probably one of the most contentious, or at least high profile. So what I'm going to try and do today is talk to you about the community practice, kind of some key updates, so to do with fish, fisheries and shellfish. Now, as you can imagine, this is an incredibly diverse topic. I've been told I'm not allowed to lock the doors and keep you in here all afternoon. I've only got a short amount of time, so I am cherry picking some key updates from the last couple of years. Thank you to Emma Claxton from Eastern Ifka and Kevin Wilson from Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust for their contributions on this. And also, kind of uncredited thanks on here, but thank you to various recreational fishers and everything, and other people around who kind of contribute some anecdotal information, which is incredibly important, as you'll find out, because I'll discuss some of the kind of data gaps that we've got, and hopefully this can be a chance to kind of form some collaborations and look at some solutions to how to answer some of these questions for which we just don't have the information for. So in terms of fish, fisheries and shellfish in the East Mee region, obviously we've got this really complex picture of biodiversity, of course. We've also got the commercial aspect, so there's a really complex commercial picture going on. So in the region where we are, the East Mee region, we kind of straddle these two regulatory areas under IC, so under 4C and 4B, the southernmost part of 4B, and also 4C. So in terms of stock areas and things like stock assessment and regulation, we're in two different areas. We've also got the Humber and the Wash estuaries, so we have different natures of fisheries within those, and different considerations, of course. And we've also got a diversity of fleets and species involved. Now, I'll come on to a couple of slides' time, but what you'll see is we are often dominated when we look at fisheries by one particular type in the East Mee region, but we do have other things going on. And of course, there's also a really important aspect, which is that recreational fishery. Okay, often overlooked. There's been some really good moves in the last few years about trying to get some kind of data gathering from the recreational angling community, but it's still an underutilised resource that we really need to get a handle on and try and get some of that information from. So it's that complex picture of ecology, conservation and people. And what I would really ask for is that we use, we can't disentangle fish and fisheries from a lot of the other topics that we've been talking about today. So things like Ben and Rodney's talks about oceanography and that productivity, and the stuff about kind of the benthic environment. We can't disentangle that from fish and fisheries and shellfish. So we need that collaborative effort, and I think probably today this is the topic where people are most siloed, partially because it's politically sensitive, it's a bit of a political football, people have really strong views on one side or the other, and what we really need to do is meet in the middle and make this collaborative effort to really find some solutions to the challenges that we're facing. But in terms of the fisheries which kind of affect our region, sorry, it's showing up very, very pale on there. But what we've got is particularly out on the Dogger Bank, we've got things like the beam trawls out there, we've got some otter trawls out there, bit of seining, bit more inshore along sort of the Holderness coast, some dredging as well, again on the inshore areas, the coastal areas, pelagic trawls and seines as well, and the big one you can see down there is the static gears, so that's the pots and the creels. Okay. Now the key challenges for this kind of theme in the area, you've got climate change and warming seas, and we've talked already about some of the consequences of that. Things like shifting species, so as well as species shifting into the East Mee region, what we've actually got is a shift of species out of the East Mee region. And in terms of commercial fisheries, that's quite important. So we've got that northernward movement of cod for about 12 kilometres a year, and a long time ago the main cod fleets located well outside the East Mee region because of that contraction of the stock northwards. Competition for space, which Poppy will, I'm sure, touch on in the next session about marine planning. Regulatory uncertainty. I don't have to tell any of the regulatory representatives in here how complex the picture is and how politically sensitive and how many strong views there are about it, and how slow regulation can move in what is a very, very dynamic system. disease and pollution, and international events. So think about the commercial viability, the economic viability of fisheries, and think about the things like the cost of fuel. So that's driven entirely by those international events. Yeah, so that is a key challenge to the fisheries in our region. Now, this is some data from the MMO, so this is MMO landing data, and I will put a caveat on the data that you'll see here. So this is drawn from that publicly accessible open access data, but this is narrowed down by UK vessel landings, so of course it includes international vessels landing into UK ports. This is just for UK vessel landings, and this is into ports in the East Mead region. Okay, so potentially this isn't representing maybe catch that is taken from within the East Mead region that might have been landed elsewhere, so maybe further north at Scarborough or further south into Essex. Okay, so that's a small caveat on here. What you can see from here is that yellow line, which is the shellfish. Yeah, so what you can see there is that shellfish fisheries and static gear fisheries generally is dominated in the East Mead region. Now, in terms of the pattern, so seeing from kind of the last 2 years, going back to April 2024 on the left, on the right-hand plot, you can see that the pelagic fisheries, you get those big seasonal cycles that you expect with some of these pelagic species, things like herring. Mackerel, kind of a little bit steady. Okay. Obviously, this isn't taking into account those recreational catches as well, so it might be things like mackerel are underrepresented in terms of this landing data because you're not getting that recreational information in there. The demersal is a bit more of a mixed bag, and you know, when you see these, you might see these big spikes and be alarmed. I have got some. I'm going to read from these because I cannot remember all of these numbers. So things like that peak in bass that you're seeing in blue, that was April 2025. That was mainly represented in Lowestoft and Felixstowe, kind of big single events. So that again, that might have been a vessel that was maybe catching from outside the region, which just landed into an East Mead regional port potentially. What else have we got? So you can see our middle one, you've got that big peak in Seoul, so that was from Felixstowe, that was about 4 tonnes in one go. So again, these big events can really upset this kind of trend in the landing data, so it needs to be taken with a little bit of a pinch of salt and don't just take it as a snapshot. And again, that peak in Smoothhound, April 2025, and that was by trawl fishery, and that was landed at Southwold, and that was about 9.6 tonnes. Now, I've got no information about where that came from. If anyone can, you know, offer any enlightenment about it, it'd be really interesting to know. Moving on to that big fisheries, the shellfish fishery. Now, the vast majority of the landings to the shellfish fishery are from places like Grimsby, Bridlington. Of course, Bridlington, lobster capital of Europe, so it's massively represented, with also smaller landings at places like Hornsea and Withensea. But generally, lobster landings greater than about 24 tonnes a month is coming in at Bridlington. That's where that massive representation is. In terms of brown shrimp, as you'd expect, that fishery down on the Wash, you've got landings at King's Lynn, Boston, Brancaster Staithe and Southwold. When we go on to the mollusk fisheries, now again another caveat on this, and thank you to Emma from Eastern Ithaca for pointing this out, that for some of these are hand collection fisheries, and as such there's no requirement to report to the MMO, so these are likely an underestimation of what's actually going on because of the nature of the fishery. But you can see there that you've got landings of whelks, and again these big seasonal peaks, so these are often coming in at Grimsby, Southwold, Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth. And those large there's a very large landing of whelks at Grimsby, about greater than 100 tonnes a month. Large tonnages of shellfish at Grimsby, but you've also got a peak in March 2026. Now that's provisional data, and that's a very large landing in Great Yarmouth. So you can see there's this spread across the area. Now some of this might be dictated by locality to those fisheries, or it might be driven by other things like facilities and other infrastructure at those ports. So don't take it as a really localised phenomenon if you see these big peaks. Now when it comes to fisheries, we can't kind of get away from things like the MPAs and some of the gear bans. So in the last couple of years there was obviously that well-known documentary, and on the back of that, beautifully produced, but maybe, well, definitely with the right intentions, but potentially kind of a little bit over-emotive, or certainly oversimplified picture of what's going on, and certainly put out there that way. But it has led to these discussions about gear bans within MPAs, not unfounded and not unreasonable. But this comes into that challenge that I said about regulatory uncertainty from the fishing industry, is not quite sure what's going on, and it's kind of highlighted. You had that the 12-week consultation period, online consultation about new bylaws inside MPAs, and after about 10 weeks the government kind of announced what they were going to do before the consultation period has ended. Now, politics is politics, and that's what's going to happen. But from a fishing industry point of view, it causes a lot of consternation, and it just adds to that silo in effect. Now, these proposed bylaws are tailored to each marine protected area's specific habitat sensitivities. So if you've got sandbanks, gravel banks, muds, and different species protection needs. So it's good that it's taking this bespoke approach and looking at those localised features. An update from Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, so thank you to Kevin for this. You've got this realignment site at the Outer Humber. Natalie deferred to some of this, looking at the little terns and the sandwich terns. So obviously we can't talk about fish and fisheries and shellfish without looking at bird food as well. So we've got the consultant contracted to survey those intertidal benthos and fish, so through seine netting, hand trawling, eDNA, so that beyond the fisheries, and looking more at the biodiversity aspect. Additional surveys further north through the Wilder Humber project. Concerns over the intensity of that nearshore shrimp trawling, which we've already touched on. Another update, lobster minimum conservation reference size. So this is a national thing which affects our region. So this decision to increase to 90 millimetres for commercial land and recreational landing of lobsters. Within the East Mee region, it's been applied in a slightly different way to other areas, like in the southwest, where it's been brought up from 87 millimetres and it's going to reach 90 millimetres by 2029. It's been done in an incremental way rather than just landing it as a 3 millimetre increase. So again, looking at the needs of the region, you can imagine if you put that 3 millimetres in one fell swoop, it's going to have a bigger impact on that big commercial fishery. Fisheries management plans, so these evidence-based action plans, and some of the significant things for our region is the cockle fishery within the Eastern Ifka district. And Eastern Ifka have reported that cockle and mussel stocks are doing fairly well, but ongoing mortality with the cockle stocks. Good survival of those mussel stocks leading to further increase in biomass, so the highest stock level since the 1940s, which is good news. In terms of the fisheries management for the southern North Sea demersal, which is obviously in our region, we've got, just highlight some of the data gaps that we've got. So some of them, like the lesser spotted dogfish and the smooth hound and the gurnard, we've got data category 3, but lacking IC's assessment for lots and lots of other ones within our region. So it shows the opportunity to find, to work together to try and plug some of these data gaps. Oyster disease in the Humber, so another challenge. So Port of Grimsby, wild population mortalities in Pacific oysters, report in August 2025 of oyster herpes virus, outbreak confirmed in Alexandra Dock. So that's just led to some more regulation about containment area, which means that you've got those shellfish movement restrictions within that area. I will whip through this very quickly. We've got, going on to kind of pollution, but also disease and wider food security. You've got the shellfish classification and microbial monitoring in Mytilus, conducted by CFAS. And you can see at various monitoring points, which are on that previous slide, so across the wash and going across into North Norfolk. You can see that there's kind of a mixed bag, and apologies if this linear trend isn't appropriate. This is not my area of expertise. so I'm happy to be corrected. But you can see it's a bit of a mixed picture, and I was really interested to see if any of these lined up with some of the content that Ben and Rodney had, where you had the drop-offs due to the droughts, or whether or not those sewage releases, which might be associated with this E. coli counts within Mytilus. It doesn't seem like it's that way, so I think there's a more complex picture going on. But someone with a more sort of microbial bent to their research, it'd be interesting to have a look at this. So it'd be great to have a chat with a few people and see if we can see what's going on here. And just to finish off, this is from Nick Rook, who's a postgrad at Hull, and it's a really nice paper that's come out. And this is the impact of bait use, static gear bait use, along the Holderness coast. So this is a paper that was published this year, and 55 vessels from Bridlington, Hornsea and Withensea, and basically it was looking at the impact of that bait use. So 70,000 pots sound a lot, that's combined pot deployment. There are not 70,000 pots in the water at any one go. But over 800 tonnes of bait per year, and what's likely happening is that is changing the food web dynamics and actually offering that artificial feeding opportunity for crabs and lobsters, the target species, but also the wider benthic communities in there. So then it's going to potentially impact and influence that lobster and crab movement patterns. Are they going to focus around where this fishery is and not move beyond it? And that general spatial distribution of commercial species, so are you concentrating and then potentially exploiting a really concentrated high density stock? Remains to be seen. It's an ongoing area of research, and it's got loads and loads more to do on this, to do with trophic feed and things like that. But yeah, really interesting paper from our area. Thank you very much.